Yeah, that's right. This is Amber Heard's first interview since that high-profile defamation trial and its stunning verdict largely in favor of her ex-husband, Johnny Depp. We spoke about what happened in that courtroom and how she feels about all of it now. It's been about more than a week since the verdict. As you sit here with me now, has it sunk in? How could it? It's surreal and difficult. In part, yes. This has been a long time coming. Do you stand by your testimony and your accusations against Johnny Depp about abuse? Of course. To my dying day, will stand by every word of my testimony. The real-life drama of the defamation case between Amber Heard and her ex-husband, Johnny Depp, captivated millions of people around the world.
Amber Heard just got exposed.
Johnny, you hit me.
This is so cringe.
With clips spreading across social media like wildfire.
I think vast majority of this trial was played out on social media. I think that this trial is an example of that gone haywire, gone amok. And the jury is not immune to that.
You think the jury saw it?
How could they not? I think even the most well-intentioned juror, it would have been impossible to avoid this.
People online and crowds outside the courthouse made it clear where they stood.
Every single day I passed for 3, 4, sometimes 6 blocks, city blocks lined with people holding signs saying, "Burn the witch," "Death to Amber." After 3.5 weeks, I took the stand and saw just a courtroom packed full of Captain Jack Sparrow fans who were vocal, energized.
Can you put into words how that felt?
This was the most humiliating and horrible thing I've ever been through. I have never felt more removed from my own humanity. I felt less than human.
Let's go back to the day of the verdict. Were you feeling confident?
That's a great question. I wish I could say yes to that. I want to say yes to you, but it wouldn't be true. Even if you think that I'm lying, you still couldn't look me in the eye and tell me that you think on social media there's been a fair representation.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
After the 6-week trial, the jury found Heard defamed Depp in a 2018 Washington Post op-ed in which she wrote she was a public figure representing domestic abuse. She never mentioned her ex-husband by name. Depp denied the abuse allegations in court. Heard won just one of 3 claims in her countersuit against her ex-husband. That verdict came less than 2 years after a judge ruled against Depp in a similar case in the UK, in which he sued a British newspaper that called him a wife beater.
There was another trial, dealt with the same substantive issues that had even more evidence in. In fact, my evidence was largely kept out. Really important pieces of evidence kept out. Done differently, handled differently by a judge instead of a jury.
Some evidence is admissible in a UK court that is not admissible in a US court. Do you think that maybe he just had better lawyers?
I will say his lawyers did certainly a better job of distracting the jury from the real issues.
For some people, they just were frankly disgusted by the whole thing and don't have much sympathy for either one of you. Can you understand that?
Absolutely. I would not blame the average person for looking at this and how it's been covered and not think that it is Hollywood brats at their worst. But what people don't understand is it's actually so much bigger than that. This is not only about our First Amendment right to speak.
But here's the thing about the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects free speech. It doesn't protect lies that amount to defamation. And that was the issue in the case.
Yes, exactly. You can't go into, the free speech does not protect you if you go into a crowded theater and you scream fire. So we get the concept of free speech from the Greeks. My understanding of what that means is not just the freedom to speak. It's the freedom to speak truth to power.
But truth is the word.
Yes.
And that was the issue.
And that's all I spoke. And I spoke it to power, and I paid the price.
In the closing arguments, the Depp lawyer called your testimony the performance of a lifetime and said you were acting. What do you say to that?
Says the lawyer for the man who convinced the world he had scissors for fingers. I'm the performer. I had listened to weeks of testimony insinuating that, or saying quite directly that, I'm a terrible actress. So I'm a bit confused how I could be both.
The Depp team argued that you were the abuser, that you instigated physical violence. Did you?
I never had to instigate it. I responded to it. When you're living in violence and it becomes normal, as I testified to, you have to adapt.
You say you were responding, but there is evidence. There are tapes in which you acknowledge hitting. There are tapes in which you say, I started the fight.
I know much has been made of these audio tapes. They were first leaked online after being edited. What you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening. It was evidence of a negotiation of how to talk about that with your abuser.
But I am looking at a transcript that he says, you start physical fights, and you say, I did start a physical fight. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. I mean, this is in black and white. I understand context. But you're testifying and you're telling me today, I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape saying you did.
As I testified on the stand about this, is that when your life is at risk, not only will you take the blame for things that you shouldn't take the blame for, but when you're in an abusive dynamic, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, you don't have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
But then there are other times, there's another tape where you're taunting him and saying, oh, tell the world, Johnny Depp, I, a man, am a victim of domestic violence.
20-second clips, or the transcripts of them, are not representative of even the 2 hours or the 3 hours that those clips are excerpt from.
Could your side have just put the whole 3 hours in then?
I'm not a lawyer. As I testified to, I was talking in those recordings as a person in extreme amount of emotional, psychological, and physical distress.
He says he never hit you.
He
never. Is that a lie?
Yes, it is.
What about the witnesses who said they have seen you instigate physical violence?
I've seen firsthand how people will file rank and support the person they depend on.
Did they all come in and lie in court?
I am not here to call any of his witnesses any names. I'm here to just kind of talk about it from what it felt like for me as a person who sat there.
When I asked his lawyers, why do you think you won? And the answer I got was, because she never took responsibility for anything she did in the marriage.
I did do and say horrible, regrettable things throughout my relationship. I behaved in horrible, almost unrecognizable to myself ways. I have so much regret. I freely and openly and voluntarily talked about what I did. I talked about the horrible language. I talked about being pushed to the extent where I didn't even know the difference between, right and wrong. I will always continue to feel like I was a part of this, like I was the other half of this relationship, because I was. And it was ugly and could be very beautiful. It was very, very toxic. And we were awful to each other. You know, I made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. But I've always told the truth.
Kurt's lawyers say they plan to appeal